Put your questions in either the Q&A or the chat. We'll do our best to pay attention to both. I can't promise I'll succeed. Multitasking is not one of my stronger suits. So hopefully somebody will say something interesting. I guess I'll introduce myself quickly to the 5 of you who are there, and then Alyssa, you can do the same. Mark Greenberg, I am the author and project manager of Necropolis. This is my second major project for the frogs. The first one was the World of the Lost Lands. So I only do things for them that, you know, have the thickness of something that will stop a small caliber round. That's enough about me. Alyssa, who the heck are you?
That was short, man. So I'm Alyssa Faden, and I'm a professional cartographer, and I've been working with the frogs now for long time. And so they approached me about doing the final maps for this great project, part of which is actually behind me right now. I had a huge amount of fun, and I will be honest with you, and Mark, you may not know this, but I never get to work with the writer, like ever. You know, people give me a commission, they say, give me maps, and that's what I do, and I hand them back, and I never see them again. Sometimes I don't even know what the project is. So this was a rare treat for me. I actually got to work hand in hand with Mark, and we sat and we collaborated on the maps a lot, maybe more than I've ever had in my professional career. So it's been a lot of fun, this one.
So how did you do like Tegel? Did they just give you any instructions, or did they just say, here's a map, fill it, and we'll do something interesting with it?
Pretty much. I mean, it varies every single sort of time, but a project like this, you know, maybe I might get a sketch, and it's like, hey, give me a dungeon map that, you know, for this. I'll go off and I'll do the dungeon map for it. But it's very rare, like never, that I get to actually sit down with the writer and go over what I've done, and have the writer actually looking at what I've done, giving feedback, sometimes changing the writing to meet the map. So yeah, this has been very collaborative for me in this process.
Writing is definitely, you know, it's definitely oftentimes just sitting at the computer and just staring at a screen for hours on end. So collaboration, actually, something I've not really done before. That really was a lot of fun. We do have a question, so I'm sure this is going to be asked a lot, and I'll answer it. Probably get a chance to answer it again later, is my guess. So what's the difference? So there are 2 prior versions of Necropolis. One was written for, I'm going to say, Dangerous Journeys, I think. And then the second version from 2002 was a D20 version, and that was the one that was previously published by Necromancer Games. So the first 2 were for different systems, but they were very largely the same adventure. If you read through them, much of it is word for word identical. So when Bill Webb said, you know, I think, Mark, now that you've finished this World of the Lost Lands, why don't you take Necropolis for your next project? I sort of didn't know what I was getting into. So I opened the volume and I started reading through it, and I looked at the manuscript. And I decided there really were, this was not a situation where it was like, hey, Mark, Necropolis, here's a word, go write an adventure. This was not sort of free form. The intention was to take Gary's work that he'd originally done for Necromancer and update it, make it work for a modern sensibilities, obviously update it to 5e, but to just try to update it. So I started working on it, and to be honest, I think it's fair to say there's very few sentences that are untouched. The plot, basic plot, is the same. This is the plot of the original Necropolis. The characters are basically all the same from the original Necropolis. We're even reusing a fair amount of the original artwork because it's great artwork, and we don't want to lose it. So it is in many ways a very similar product in terms of the outline, but I made a lot of changes. Some of it was just trying to make it work a little bit better for the system. Some of it was Gary just he did some things that I thought could have been better done. And I've actually sort of occasionally scratched my head thinking, wow, what would Gary Gygax think about this nobody rewriting what he thought was one of his premier works? I have no idea. I hope he would like the changes that I've made. I have no idea. But if you've read Necropolis before, you'll recognize the story. But there's rooms I totally rewrote, motivations I changed. It's a little bit more flexible, I think, at this point. Gary's original product was a little more sort of A, B, C, D, E, follow the line, and I tried to make it a little bit more flexible. Did I succeed? I don't know. People will have to read it and decide. So far, the few folks who've gotten to read it and my playtesters have enjoyed it, so I figure that's a big thumbs up. So long answer to the question, but if you have the original, you'll want to get this one, I think, because it's pretty cool, I think. So, I mean, Alyssa, you did have to read this to do the math. I don't know. Did you have a reaction? You can be entirely honest.
Yeah, no, I actually did have a reaction.
My feelings.
No. I mean, I think one of the unique things that I do is I draw my maps like on Twitch or YouTube. I stream as I'm going. And I have a habit, I did the same with Teagle, where I'll actually be reading the description, and I don't do spoilers, but I'll read the room description and I'll go, okay, so this is what we're drawing, and then I'll draw it. And I had the original Necromancer Games version that I was working off to begin with before I got a draft manuscript of the rewrite. And there were rooms, honestly, where, and I've had this, by the way, in almost every project I've worked on, where I'd sit there and I'd read it and I'd go, that makes no sense. What? And I would reread it. Or I'd go, okay, well, that's kind of boring. But okay, that's what we're doing. Like there's rooms where they're just empty in the original, or like there's a series of rooms actually over on my right shoulder here, in my background, where it almost felt like Gary wasn't sure what he wanted to do with them, and so that the content is kind of like it almost feels chaotic and random, or nothing at all, or very samey than the room across the way, but not necessarily in a good way. So I'm going through the original and I'm drawing it like that. And I will be honest with you, I then got the draft manuscript from Mark, and there were certain areas where they seemed just a little bland or pointless or random and chaotic, where I think Mark must have sat there and gone, what? And in fact, the other one is actually over the shoulder right here. I mean, this is one hell of a room, no spoilers at all. It's an interactive room. The characters can get in there and actually turn this big, huge dial. There's a massive amount of text that describes it. And the original, let's just say that it was kind of disappointing what happens when you interact with it. Mark gave it way more purpose. So in doing my redrawing of some rooms, it was actually, honestly, it was a pleasure. There's one room in particular where in the original is this big, huge room. It's empty. It's just empty. And it's not the only one. It's like, there's nothing going on at all. And Mark's writing gave it purpose. And so it looks better on the map. And it plays way better as well. So, Mark, that's my honest opinion. I think you paid homage to it without a doubt. This is, it was one of the best. It's Gary's work, but and it's the same. It's canon, right? But you've taken canon, you've massaged it. We're 20 years on now, and you've kicked it up a notch. And of course, you were talking a lot about the 5e considerations you had to take.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it obviously taking something that was D20 and making it work for 5e it's challenging. If you've read Wizards did a conversion of Tomb of Horrors, for example, into 5e, and that's a literal conversion. It doesn't convert that well, to be honest. So some of it was changing things, so it worked better with 5e. I still think Gary intended this to be an extremely challenging adventure. His intention was, the way a few people have described it is that Necropolis is a little bit like the village of Hamlet, followed by Tomb of Horrors. And there is some truth to that. The final tomb is a little Tomb of Horrors-esque, but I tried to take out the things that I always found frustrating with Tomb of Horrors, and actually have it make sense. Even if the players never figure it out, if the DM has the explanation, then the DM knows how to fill in the gaps when necessary. But I still think that this could kill, and I know everyone says you can't kill a party of 5e characters. This adventure in a number of places could be a TPK if the players don't take it seriously. So I think in that regard, I think I succeeded. I think we may have had 1 or 2 people join in since we started. If you have any questions, chat or Q&A, just type it in. It doesn't have to even relate to this, but if it does relate to Necropolis, great, we'll try to answer your questions. If it relates to anything else, I don't know, feel free to ask.
Well, let me ask a question, because I was very heavily focused on the final dungeon, right? The big bad boss dungeon. So I never read any of the rest of it. What was your favorite bit?
Ooh.
In this big, huge process of the rewrite. And by the way, for people that don't know, Necropolis is more of a campaign setting, It's a full-on campaign. It's not just an individual scenario. There's lots of adventures, lots and lots and lots of maps. You're going to have characters in there a long time. And Mark did a huge amount of work on this. So, Mark, your favorite bit?
Wow.
For any reason?
That's really hard to say. There were a couple of places, and this doesn't entirely answer the question, but there were a couple places where I really felt that I took something, an idea that Gary had, and played around with it, and really did make it, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, more logical and more interesting. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's a, so anybody who doesn't want any spoilers, close your ears totally at this point. But if you don't want to have anything, but we've been talking about the Tomb of Rahotep, which is what Alyssa mapped, and like that dial room that you were talking about. I was really happy with how that one worked out. I really was. I think my favorite maybe mini little encounter in the whole thing, ironically, was also in the tomb. For those who know Alyssa, she likes putting in little Easter eggs and strange things. Well, there was one place where she put something in there, 2 things in there. And it wasn't in the manuscript I sent. It wasn't in Gary's manuscript. You just threw these things in there at random. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, I can do this. And I figured out what exactly the encounter should be there. And I think those are 2 of my favorite little things. It doesn't necessarily change the plot any, but as you said earlier, the collaborative nature was really what was a lot of fun in that. Because normally it was just me sitting, hey Edwin, it was just me sitting at the computer, looking at the map and just working. And that was one where I got to, somebody else's idea, and I challenged myself. I said, I'm not going to just say no, take that out. No, I'm going to make it work. And that was actually a lot of fun. I think in the there is also a temple involved earlier on in the adventure that, and I will say that especially there and other places, you can tell that Gary did an enormous amount of research into Egyptian mythology. It's very, very deeply researched. And I tried to stay as close as possible to that in sort of honor all that work that he did. and there's one place where I felt that it was another situation where I felt what he had designed was a little repetitive. It was sort of like, well, each one of these sort of does the exact same thing. And then there was sort of an end in that area that, to my mind, it didn't fit. And so I did some more research. I found out, basically what he had been looking at. I dug a little deeper, and I came up with an alternative for that area. And I was able to use things that he had written, but in a very different way. And I thought it was very successful. I've had 2 parties go through that encounter, and in the play testing. And the first one actually taught me a lot about it, so I made some changes. And the second one, they did very well. They played it exactly right, using the information they had. So I was actually quite happy with that area too. And it was just it felt very successful to have been able to take something that had been done before and re-envision it in a way that I thought was really a lot of fun. So that would be my favorite part. What is your favorite Easter egg that you've put into the maps that you're willing to tell people about?
Yeah, okay. Because I'm gonna have to pick one. I'm gonna have to pick one.
Because some of them, I know you want people to find them on their own, but there's got to be one.
Well, okay, I can name a couple and let people just still find them on their own. I will explain that, when I worked on the Teagle map a few years ago, there's a lot of rooms in there that are, let's just say of the nature, it's a bedroom. And but it's also a haunted house, right? It's a house of horror. So I wanted to start adding, a lot of fun to these rooms, and that's where this all started off. Plus, actually, let me take a step backwards. I was a big, huge fan of the egg in the expedition to the Barrier Peaks. The EGG, it's very on your nose, but it's a nice little Easter egg. I was kind of inspired by that as a kid.
For those people who may not be familiar with it, if you go to Expedition in the Barrier Peaks, in the I don't think you can't spoil that anymore, can you? Probably not. I mean, at this point, people haven't played it. It's sort of on them. But the walls at one point shape an EGG very clearly. So Gary built in his own EGG Easter egg, but it's really like, as soon as you see it, you can't unsee it.
You're right. He just turned it upside down. It's like, ooh. But I like the concept of it, right? So working on Teagle, I started putting in all sorts of things. I've got for a good time called Zach, and I've got this made up phone number in there, and that's in the bathroom. I've got like a little tiny sort of sponge on the end of the stick because I'm a big, huge Romanophile. I've got a Roman shield in one room. I've got Bill Webb written out in the brickwork of one of the walls. But not so on your nose as the EGG, but I just started to stack it. I also had a dead Zach Glazar, a skeleton of Zach Glazar with a goddammit Zach t-shirt crumpled up in one of the secret corridors. So fast forward 3 years, I'm working on Necropolis, and we're doing this thing. By the way, Necropolis, I drew it 60 inches by 81 inches. It's 2 1 inch equals 5 feet scale. It's a huge, huge, huge map, and the same sort of scale and detail as the Teagle. So if I've got this amount of canvas, let's have some fun. Let's throw in some Easter eggs. So there is a dead Zach with a goddammit Zach. There is a spirit, Jennifer Glazar. She was on Teagle, but I think these 2 characters are going to make it into every map I do for the frogs, just so you know. Zach is actually, his dead body is also on the side view. You'll have to hunt to try and find him, but he's there. He's about 4 pixels in size. I drew him in this big and then I shrunk him down to scale. So he's very small, but believe me, he's in there. There's also, there was one room with a teddy bear sitting on the bed and a knife and a bloodied trail. And that's it. Just make of that what you will, GM. So there's so many. There's easily a dozen Easter eggs in the map for you to hunt out.
that one I did not specifically address. I figured that was one probably best left to the imagination of whoever's running the game.
I'm glad you didn't make me take that one out. I gotta be honest.
No. That's not my job. That's not my job. All right, so we got more people who have been arriving. Hello, Kim. Anybody who wants to ask a question, has a comment, wants to expound upon the issue of the day, feel free to enter it into the chat, or you can put it into the Q&A. I think only Alyssa and I get to see the Q&A, but if you want everybody to see it, feel free to add it in the chat, and we will do our best to respond either articulately or not. I would note, let's see, I was going to check, see where we're at. So we launched the Kickstarter today, which of course, I don't know how you feel, Alyssa, but you know, this is my second one where I was, you know, really intimately involved in it. And my God, it scares the heck out of me every time, because it's like, we're going to go live. It's like, oh, I hope everything is going to be okay. Yep, we've broken $40,000 and have almost 500 backers, and I appreciate absolutely every one of them. And I don't know, I feel a lot of responsibility. It's like 500 people want to read this book, or at least own the book. Some of them hopefully will want to read the book. Some of them are collectors and they'll keep it in the shrink wrap and it'll never see oxygen. But for everybody else, I just hope this thing actually provides inspiration and some fun gaming. I mean, I ran through a number of play tests and people seem to have a good time. And I think there's at least one or two people who are here right now who may have been through part of the play test, and hopefully, since they're here, that doesn't mean they hated it. So it was an interesting process. So anybody have any questions, or, you know, Alyssa and I are just we're going to start talking about, you know, the weather or whatever's going on. You guys can be bored out of your mind.
Well, I actually want to know, what was one of the most challenging parts that you had to do?
You know, I think the hardest part in all of this, in many ways, is pitching it making the encounters work for the party of the level that it's intended to be. One of the things I learned early in this process is that the challenge rating in 5e is totally broken. Just do not bother using it. You know, at least in my view, it just didn't work in designing encounters. Especially when you're talking about a party, you know, of 5, 6, or 7 characters. You know, they can do some serious damage if they outnumber one creature. It was really quite quite a surprise in many ways. So I had to really find a way to try to pitch it. And I found that very challenging to actually make it work for the characters of the level I wanted. And a lot of it, you know, I'll tell you, you know, the tomb can be very challenging if you don't have the right mix of characters. And I don't want to go into why, because that would be a spoiler. But there is actually a side note for the DM that I put in specifically because that may change how the DM pitches some of the encounters. I found that very challenging, interestingly enough. This is also, it's intended to be a long process. I mean, you know, you could play this over dozens of game sessions for months. There's enough material here for the players to really dig in for a long time and to make the progress work so that you're at the right level at the beginning and you're also at the right level when you get to the tomb and you get right level later. That all was just mechanically very difficult. And in some respects, I think a DM running this is going to have to be, just as this is an adventure, I think that will challenge really good players. It will challenge a really good DM too, to really be very thoughtful, to have read very thoroughly the adventure, the background, all of the aspects that go into it. It's a complicated story. Gary wrote a complicated story, and I kept that. That did not go away. So I think that was in many ways the hardest part. We did get a question, how many hours did it take to do all the writing? I can't even begin to tell you how many hours it took to write it. I mean, I can't even remember when I started working on it. It was sometime last year. And I would work on it for a while, then I'd have to put it aside for a while because it was very intense. It's a very intense process to write and to rewrite. And I must have read in the course of rewriting it, I must have read the manuscript through effectively 5 or 6 times, where I would rewrite it, then I'd go back and then I'd rewrite again, and then I'd go back and I'd rewrite again. And it was still really depressing to see the the Jim can be thoughtful, or just let the PCs die. That would work too. You know, it would shorten the adventure, but that would work. Or it could be like a video game. Just have them save at a certain place. They go back to that place and they start all over again. So I wish I could give a real sense for how many hours it took. It was a lot. Let's put it that way. Yeah, and going back to that, I know some people are very much of the you know, play it as written and let the dice fall where they may. I think this is a tough one to play like that. I think this is one DM's going to have to be pretty thoughtful about how to run it. What are your character's strengths? And depending upon the mix of characters in the party, it really can have a dramatic effect on the party's ability to survive certain encounters. And I can think of a number where if they just get unlucky, you know, enough for them fail their saving throw, you know, it's either TPK or they're captured, one or the other. So how many hours did it take you to make the map, Alyssa? What, 5 or 6, I think?
5 or 6 hours, yeah. Never bad. Give or take an hour. So, no, I mean, I actually do tend to actually number my maps as I go, and it gives me a really good, solid sense of like how many hours I've got in on it. And I'm definitely I'm above 150 hours right now, and I'm probably going to close out closer to 200 when all is said and done on this project. So Teagle was more like 350, but Teagle was also considerably larger. But this is about 200 hours.
And you probably don't want to ask how much, you know, per hour you're being paid for that, do you?
No, well, and I don't do it, you know, for the per hour rate. I do it because I want to create this iteration of Necropolis. I want to be involved. I want to have, like, you know, my work in there. I want to be able to bring my flavor, my humor to this project. That's why I do it. It's not even really about the money, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Question was asked about why no hardcover for international backers. Now, just to be clear, although I am the project manager, neither Alyssa nor I are really the operational side of the world. So you know, this is not necessarily our ambit, but I think I know the answer to that one, and that's just that to be able to prepare the hardcover and to ship it, it needs to be done out of the U.S. And there just is not a cost-effective and method of shipping hardcovers from the U.S. overseas that ensures that they'll arrive in actually one piece. You know, I'm aware of a prior international buyer from another Frog God product, and I think they ended up sending this person 4 or 5 copies before they finally got a hardcover that hadn't been destroyed by the post. And there just isn't a good way to do it. So at this point, the only solution that the frogs have found that works economically and ensures that a product gets delivered is the soft cover. It's not a great answer, and hopefully eventually a better solution will be found, but that's currently the best operational. If you want more details, Zach can probably provide them at some point as well. But that's sort of the short answer. So Again, feel free to anybody, whoever's on, feel free to ask questions either in the Q&A or the chat. So one of the things I thought I would mention is like what's behind my shoulder here. And I assume everybody here has probably been on the Kickstarter page, all the phenomenal art that is done. We really have sort of a wealth of art. I mean, not only do we have everything that was done for the original Necromancer product, we've got all this new stuff that we have commissioned, and we're actually going to show a fair amount of what we got to you guys. It isn't too much of a spoiler. There are a couple pieces that that will not see the light of day until you open the book, because they're spoilers. They have scenes that you should only get to see when your party arrives at a certain location. But one of the fun parts, from my perspective, is, and I'll say, so some of the art was commissioned even before I got involved, because they sort of knew what a lot of it was. But after I got involved, there were a number of places that I felt we really needed more art. And I had the chance to work with Casey Christopherson, who is not here, but who is a phenomenal individual to work with, and work with him to figure out, okay, what art do we need? What fits within the budget? Because ultimately there is a budgetary limitation to what we can commission. Who are the best artists to hire for different pieces? And let's get some stuff here. And that's, one sample is behind me right now. And you can see a whole bunch on the Kickstarter page and in the video, which, by the way, thumbs up on the video. I love the video. Hope everybody's looked at it. We worked on that a bit too. I was involved in it. That was a lot of fun. But there's nothing quite like being an author and coming up with an idea. And this is the same thing that happened in World of Lost Lands, where I'm writing this and I'm thinking, we need an illustration of this, and it would be awesome. And to work with Casey and then to get an artist lined up, and then to see, hey, this is what you were imagining, in color, by a really artistic person unlike me, is just a phenomenal part of this process. I really, really enjoyed that, both when I did the World of Lost Lands, the cover of that, which is the Wizard's Wall. I really wanted that to be the cover, and Casey found, and I'm not going to remember the artist's name. That's terrible. Maybe Pex will pop in and remind me. But to then see it in living color was just incredible. So from an author standpoint, working with the art is just cool. And as I said earlier, and Colin Chan, thank you, Zach. Colin did a phenomenal job with that. It was just magnificent. And then working with Alyssa on the map, which was even more iterative, because I got to actually appear. I popped into some of your streams, and you'd ask me questions, and I could answer them in real time. That was a lot of fun too.
I actually had a blast with that. It's very rare that I actually get someone I'm drawing a map for pop into the chat and we actually start working on it together, So there were some descriptions in the original before I got the draft where I was like, so how does this work? What am I drawing? And you were like, oh yeah, just do this and this. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And that was fantastic. I mean, I like my mapping on camera to be like, we're just a bunch of friends hanging out while I'm drawing. And it felt like that when you were actually in the chat. It was this great collaboration going on.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, that was really cool to be able to do that. We just had to be careful not to give away too many spoilers. And there were a few times when it's like, yeah, let's talk about that part offline. We really can't. We really can't discuss this with people.
And a couple of times where I would open up the book and I'd start reading, you'd go, okay, let's just skip forward.
Yeah. We got another question. One of my favorite parts of the original is the Temple of Set. Why was it not included and is so far down the stretch goals? Well, first of all, I sincerely hope that we make it to that stretch goal. It's certainly our hope and plan. I don't think this is giving away any secrets. for those who know the original, and obviously, the person asking the question does, there is a place in one of the adventures where basically you have to open a secret door. And if you open it one way, you go where you want to go. And if you open the other way, you go to the Temple of Set, which is really not where you want to go, and sort of leads you massively astray from the original design and what you were trying to do. I sort of felt as I was writing it, there was already so much in that area to do, and it was already so challenging for the adventurers to have them go on this sidetrack that they have no way of knowing is a sidetrack, actually. Struck me as being disruptive of the adventure, and so it really didn't fit within the adventure that I had contemplated. So with that change, and frankly, it was, with the art and everything else, it was a long enough book. We didn't think it was necessary, and it certainly it's a little bit like, I'm probably gonna get hate mail for this. It's a little bit like Tom Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings. I love Tom Bombadil. He's like my favorite character, but there's a reason he was omitted from the movies. It's just not that intrinsic to the plot. And so I sort of felt that way about Temple of Set. That being said, it's a really cool adventure. It is in the process of being converted and edited. The intention is to make it available. As I said, there are circumstances where a DM may say, wow, my players really aren't ready for the next encounter. They're just not high enough level. They didn't get enough experience points. So I need to give them a side quest or something to help them level up or something. Temple of Set will really serve that purpose. Or it can be set wherever you want in Kemet. It doesn't have to even be connected to this. Some people, have talked in some of the comments already about how, just getting to Kemet, if you are in those who know Lost Lands, if you're an Akados-based party, Kemet's a long way, and that's a long adventure just getting to the beginning of this book if the DM wants to prepare it. And Temple of Set can easily be used for that purpose, for a fixed adventure. So our hope and our expectation is that we're going to get there. Knock on wood, and everybody cross your fingers. But that's the reason it was taken out. But we really want everybody to have it, and the hope certainly is that will happen. So.
And there is a question in the Q&A, and there is also one in the chat. Gaetano, I hope I didn't mispronounce your name there. I see your question, and I'm going to try and get an answer for you. Gaetano asks, will the maps be the same in style as offered on Fantasy Grounds, VTT Extras? Will they have further info visuals not in the book? I can't talk to all of the maps, and I'm not involved in the VTT process, to be honest with you. But now I've read that out loud. I'm hoping someone that does know will chime in, and I've just pinged Pex as well.
And there's a question for you, Alyssa, about the canvas map prints. Do you know the answer to that one?
I saw the physical canvas map prints as add-ons. What can I tell you about those? So just so everyone knows, obviously you're going to have a fold-out map as part of being a backer. You get it as part of the book. You get all of the maps, of course, but you get the large map as well. The one that I drew, Rahotep's tomb, I think we're referring to it as. Well, there is a limited edition counted and signed canvas option for that as an add-on. It is a collector's piece. It is on archival quality canvas. They're good. I think we're doing 25 of them. They're all going to be numbered. They're shipping to me. I'm going to sign every single one of them. I might even personalize it because that's what I do. And then we're going to ship those to the distribution center. And so we're not going to know who gets what number. There's only 25. And at the last count, I think about half actually have gone already. So it's definitely going to be something that you're going to want to have your hands on. It's a display piece for sure.
Yeah, and if you've gotten some of the other prior canvas maps, I mean, this is I assume this is similar to the the types that you normally do for your other maps, probably.
Yeah.
They're really nice. I mean, the colors pop, and it's nice. It's very cool. I hope I get one, and I don't know how I can get one at this point. They'll probably all sell out. Don't have any left for the author.
They don't have one for me either. Someone told me, if it was Zach told me the other day, it's like, you do keep one of these for yourself, right? And it's like, oh, am I meant to be? So no, I never do.
Well, you could always make another one for yourself, I guess. I suppose it is your art. So, again, just reminding everybody who is currently watching, feel free to ask any questions. You can either use the Q&A function at the bottom, or you can use the chat. You can ask us anything about Necropolis, about the process of creating it. You can ask us what it's like to work for Zach Glazer. We'll be honest, that kind of stuff. So let's see, what else? When can we expect Necropolis?
Oh, Lord.
Tell you what, Zach, I'll do that as soon as you finish the conversion to 5e of the Blight. No response. Will you be converting Set's daughters? At this point, that's not in we talked about it. It is certainly possible, but that's not currently in the queue. But yeah, that is definitely something that we've been talking about. We decided not to make it part of the Kickstarter. Certainly, one of the goals, again, was to really try to get this to be self-contained. We all know too well about Kickstarters that go crazy and hog wild with too many add-ons and too many stretch goals, and we want to make sure that whatever we offer, we have the ability to deliver on the time frame that we are proposing. So that's why you're not seeing things like comedian coins and stuff. I hope I didn't just destroy our next stretch goal, but you're not seeing those kinds of things because we really are trying to keep this to a manageable process, so we can accomplish the goal and get it out. How many pages made the book? To be honest, I don't even really have a good sense yet. I've got the page count in Word, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything because we've got the art to put in, and we've got maps, and to make it easier before, especially for the tomb, for Alyssa's work, we're going to include sort of sections of the map throughout, because that's a very long section of the adventure, and to always have to go back 50, 60 pages to go see the map is not effective. So I really wish I could tell you how many pages it's going to be. As soon as we've got a better sense, it is just so everybody knows, the 5e book is entirely written at this point. Still needs to undergo conversion to Swords and Wizardry, but that should not take a lot of time. But it's there. Now, it hasn't been formatted yet. I think it hasn't gone to layout. So somebody asked for a layout page. I'm sure at some point during this Kickstarter, we'll try to get that out there if we can. But it has not gone to layout yet. So that is sort of the next step. And then we'll have a sense for how many pages it is. So I wish I knew.
And Zach says that layout actually starts next week on this. And of course, layout is going to affect how many pages. I mean,
exactly.
Mark could have one page right now, but you throw in a few maps inserts, and before you know it, it's 2 pages. So they have no idea right now.
Yeah. All right. Before we go to Kim's question, that's specifically for Zach, so we can make him pop in. We got another question, which is, what advice for GMing, DMing when running this adventure? So I sort of answered a little bit that earlier. We do have more attendees, but this really is intended to challenge even the best players, and that doesn't just mean the highest level characters, because a lot of these require really careful thought, a very careful approach. So not only do you need a party of fairly decent level, you also need players who are being very thoughtful, and generally you should need to be experienced. Because of that, you really probably need to be a relatively experienced DM. I think that would be very helpful. You need to read through this thing completely. There are some aspects that are very complicated, and that comes from the source material, and some of it comes from Egyptian mythology that you really need to understand. It's all described in the book, but you need to understand to be able to properly run it, and that can be a challenge. That can be a challenge. I also think that a DM may have to think about modifying certain parts of the encounters depending upon how the composition of the party. I'll give one simple example. Do you have a paladin in the party? Because paladins give everybody within 10 feet of them a substantial bonus to saving throws. That has a big effect on a party when there's magical effects going on. So, if you don't have a paladin, you may need to take that into account when you are running the adventure. There is sort of the, let the dice fall where they may, and if the party dies, the party dies. And I sort of get that. But, every DM knows their party better than I ever could, obviously. And I think proper tailoring is appropriate for that. And to do that sometimes has to be done on the fly. You may not know immediately. So like I said, I think this will be a challenging adventure, not just for higher level characters and experienced players, but it will be a challenge to run even for an experienced DM. But I think that makes it a lot of fun. I certainly found it interesting and fun and challenging to write it. So
I want to jump into Gaetano. And by the way, if I'm saying your name wrong, that's the third time I've done it wrong. But on the VTT front, it's still a little bit TBD right now. There are a lot of maps in this. There is a Robert Altbauer, who's a great cartographer, and he's done the majority. My super detailed piece is but this much of the overall map product. And the Frogs are still gathering all of that together and preparing the VTT actual sort of, I'm going to call it product lineup. I will say that they always do top-notch quality. And, if anyone's going to give you exactly what you want with extra little goodies in there as well, it will be them. But they don't know right now.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else over here.
Well, I think Kim asked a question. And also we had David Paul says, another favorite. Did you keep Crazy Anubis Boy? ? Trying not to spoil it, but
I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure what exactly. I think the answer is yes, because I did not delete any. Actually, no, okay. I know what to whom you're referring, and the answer is yes. It's still there. Still there. I have to admit that was one that I thought was, wow, this is really strange. But yeah, it's still there. Let's see.
Oh, by the way, there are going to be battle map areas or battle maps for areas that have encounters in them that may or may not be in the book, and they may well make their way to the VTT universe. So there may well be extra goodies in the VTT sphere that aren't in the book. So I think there's a possibility of that, I'm being told.
Yep. Let's see. Trying to see. Okay, so the question for that Kim asked that we'll leave for Zach later is a printed map and handouts pack as an add-on to purchase. It's an operational issue, so that will have to come from he who operates, which is not me.
I think Kim's pretty passionate about this. I've saw her ask it over on the Kickstarter page as well. So.
Yep. Well, Kim, you probably, you can go harass Zach directly. So there was another question. Oh, and this comes from Pex, which is a question specifically for me, which points out that I've been doing a lot of writing and organizing of Frog God products. And if I want to do something on my own, what would it be? And again, for those who don't know, my first project for Frog God, World of the Lost Lands, this massive tome, coordinating, I forget how many, I don't remember how many authors we had working on that, 7 or 8 authors, art, working through the Lost Land Bible, huge project, but largely of other people's, material. I mean, I did write a large part of it myself, but I didn't create the World of the Lost Lands. So, although I did actually create certain sections that had never been covered before. And that will get me to the answer to my question. The Necropolis really is a rewrite. I mean, it's a complete rewrite, but it's a rewrite of somebody else's adventure that I hope I've done proper credit to. But would I have written Necropolis as an adventure on my own? Probably not. It's not my thing. There is, however, a section of the World of the Lost Lands that, as far as I know, nobody has touched, because I created it out of whole cloth when I wrote World of the Lost Lands. I shouldn't say I created it out of whole cloth. There was another writer who wrote it, and I modified it. But there is a Western, the nation to the west of the Lost Lands, beyond Reem, for those who know your Lost Lands geography, is the nation of Jaen. And as far as I know, nobody's written anything there, and I've got some ideas. So I think, with Bill's permission, which I believe I have, I'm going to probably write something for that. I don't know when that's going to happen. I may need a little bit of a break after this. This is hard stuff, by the way, for those who haven't written this, you bleed onto the, I was going to say onto the page, but it's really onto the computer to make this work and good. And I may need a break, but that's an area that I'd like to explore, because it is otherwise utterly unexplored. And I have some really cool ideas that I came up with while I was working on it for the World Book, and that it's sort of an area of it's in the Lost Lands, but it's a blank page in many ways. And so that's probably my next project for these guys, other than wrapping this one up, which has a ways to go. Obviously, we got a Kickstarter to finish, we got fulfillment, and unfortunately, I don't just turn over the manuscript. I'm also project manager, which means the whole process, including looking at the proofs and signing off on the layout and everything else, is still in front of me. So there's a big project still ahead. Gaetano asked, the previous versions were fun. I adapted them for different climes, such as swamp and attic areas. Do you see this revision being easily adaptable as well? I don't think it'd be any less or more adaptable than the prior versions, because as I said, the substance is still there. I mean, obviously, I would say there's an awful lot of stuff that really is very Egyptian mythos, I think, specific. So, and I don't want to go into any details, because that really is a spoiler as to how that works in the adventure. And that's actually something that Gary had built into the original, but I tied it even more, because I felt that there was some really interesting information there, but it didn't quite end up feeling like it was connected to what you were really trying to do, what the goal of the adventure was. So I think that might make it a little more challenging. But my guess is that if it wouldn't take that much time to do effectively a search and replace, if that's how you wanted to handle it, or otherwise. It's otherwise, if you could convert the prior ones, I don't know why you couldn't convert this one. Reference table to Kemet gods. I think I've already got that. that I put together. I don't know that I got, you know, I'm not sure if I saw that now that I think about it. Arctic, yes, Arctic, not attic. That makes sense. I don't know that I saw it. Actually, if somebody has that, David Paul says there's a reference table of the Kemet gods. I actually might need that now, interestingly enough, for something. So if anybody, I don't know, like PAX knows where that is, that might be very helpful. And I don't want to explain why, because that's a bit of a spoiler. So, oh, question for you there, Alyssa, about the map.
What's something you put in the map that you ended up taking out for reason here? Actually, that's a really good one to answer. And you can actually see it right about there. You see the little wordy gig right there? Well, there's a corridor that's going off, and I'm not going to do any spoilers. And the corridor obviously goes off, and there's sort of crossroads and all sorts of things. Well, you can probably imagine in amongst all of these crossroads, there are a few traps in this dungeon, quite a few. So play smart. Well, as the artist of the map, if let's say there's a trap somewhere, I would like, well, there'd be bodies or blood or bones, shattered bones. And so I started adding little shattered bones and blood smears and things like that. And I did that all over the map. And Mark took one look and he was like, paraphrasing, cool, but you've basically shown them where the trap is. And I was like, yeah, got a point. So I ended up taking all of those out. I took those sections off. So that was, I was a little bit too on the nose with where the traps were, put it that way. So I took that out.
And needless to say, it's a tomb in a necropolis. If you're not expecting traps, you probably shouldn't be playing in the game. That's what it's about. All right, Zach is now warning us that there's a 10-minute, we're down to 10 minutes. Actually, now 9. Any other questions, guys? Come on. Yeah, I can keep talking forever if you want, but would love to answer specific questions if anybody has one about the process or the maps or the art or what the nature of library binding is, which I don't actually know, that kind of stuff, which I'm learning. All right, well, I will keep waiting. Let's see what else I can talk about the process. Part of it, I would note that, I mean, I did try to, and Gary had this sort of in some respect in what he wrote, but I didn't sort of follow him at all. But I did try to add alternatives for DMs in a few places where I felt that something might work better for one party versus another. So there's some side boxes with DM advice, and I feel like with an adventure this complicated and this potentially challenging, that was actually helpful, and that was based upon both my own gut reaction, but also play testing. And a couple of my play testers made some comments and said, you might want to explain this or explain that, and I felt that was a useful thing to add. You don't see that a lot in most adventures, to be honest, published adventures, but I thought that was a useful thing to include here because of the nature of the adventure, and a lot of it just ended up being how 5e works, which really was quite different than the D20 system. So, oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch
of flurry of questions now. So Kim wants to know, are you running this at Gamehole?
I hadn't planned on it at this point. The only reason is because I have to admit, I'm getting a little tired of the adventure. I might, but you know, there is something to be said for being fresh at it. Now that's not until October, so maybe I'll feel differently in October. But I've been living and breathing this adventure. That was not necessarily the plan. Yes, there will be DM and player maps, and in fact, Alyssa's map has a specific layer just for that, so that you can have for the VTT, that the things that should be hidden are hidden from the party. We're also going to have, I believe, as an appendix to the book, all of the DM maps, but unlabeled. So those can also be used. So for example, there's some overland maps as well. You don't really want to have a map with the labels of the encounter locations. So so we'll have that as well as part of the book. Same look as Tegel Manor with glossy paper. I assume so.
I believe that's the intent. Yes. And Zach will shut me down if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the intent.
Okay.
Super nice.
And I think this, I'm going to throw this one to you, Alyssa. What other projects are you working on you want to tell people about?
Hey. This is actually a time where I really can't share too much along the official fronts. And I don't want to bore everyone with the personal projects I'm doing. But I think there's, I guess, the two big pieces of news for me. One is I'm working on a rework of the Cosmology of Role-Playing map, which was in Gygax magazine #1. I'm bringing it kicking and screaming up to 2021. But while the original had something like, let's just say 50 game systems represented on it, I'm intending to add every game system. There will be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not over 1,000. It's proven to be quite a struggle. I'm hoping to have that one done for GaryCon next year and available in print and canvas format. So that's a personal project, but it will look super sexy and be very relevant to our gaming sphere. Then the other is I'm actually working on a couple of maps for Chaosium, but I can't tell you what they are. Kind of a little bit of an NDA thing, but the fact that I'm doing a couple of maps for Chaosium gives me goosebumps. So those are the things that I'm working on.
Very cool. So since you're doing the Cosmology role-playing games, I have to ask the question, what's your favorite system?
Oh Lord, really? You're gonna do that?
Yeah. Well, we've only got
I actually know what it is. Actually, I'm a sucker for Call of Cthulhu. I am. I'm a sucker for Call of Cthulhu through and through. I play Dungeons and Dragons and almost every single version my entire life, but Call of Cthulhu is my favorite system, and I am okay with any version of it, but I'm a big, huge sucker for the 7th edition.
Yeah. Hey, given the time we're down, in the chat, for those who have not seen it, there is a link to the Kickstarter. So if you haven't backed yet, please do. There is also a link to Alyssa's Patreon. I am a member of that, and you get all sorts of cool perks, and you get to watch the mapping of Rome and all sorts of really cool things. So check that out as well, please. So I'm
going to jump in right here real quick and say
I don't have a Patreon, unfortunately. He's appeared. Zach Glazer.
I just want to jump in and thank everybody. We've had a really great day on Necropolis. All the support we've got from everybody has been really fantastic. A shout out to both Mark and Alyssa for a lot of hard work that went into getting this to the point where we could comfortably launch it, knowing we can deliver it fairly soon, because so much of it's already been done and has been done so well. There are a limited number of maps from Alyssa that are on as add-ons. They're limited for a reason, because I am personally shipping them from my house. So it's not going through the Paulsville warehouse. So they're limited for that purpose. We're going to guarantee that they come in really nice tube in really great shape. So when you're buying them, you can stretch them yourself artistically. They're art prints. They're wonderful. The last thing I want to shout out, and he doesn't get, I always am swearing at him and making fun of him. John Barnhouse, who we call Pex, and we always make fun of him. We tease him because he earns it, has earned a big praise today. Pex has worked very hard to make sure that we have a good, smooth and successful launch, and he has done so in a way that I think deserves praise in front of everybody. He's a good, hardworking guy who works behind the scenes. He takes a lot of abuse, and in this case, he deserves the praise. So I'm going to give that to him. As far as everybody else goes, thank you, Alyssa, thank you, Mark, thank you, everybody. And if there's any further questions, you can ask us directly in Discord. And if there's anything that comes up, please let us know. We have more exciting stuff coming. I would love to see us unlock like the Temple of Set. It's possible. These are expensive things to do, but with enough support, money makes everything possible, everybody. So thank you so much for your support, and we will be going into this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Really appreciate the opportunity.